Welcome to Deciphering Growth, the show that explores mental health from every angle. We bring you conversations with personal opinions, stories, and practical tips. We aim to break down the stigma and help you live your best life. So please sit back and let's dive in. Before we begin, we want to remind our listeners that this podcast represents the opinions of Tiffany Graves, Eric Stone, and the show's guests. The content provided is for informational purposes only and should not be considered medical advice. Please consult a healthcare professional for any medical questions. The views and opinions expressed are our own and do not represent those of our workplaces. Listening, reading, emailing, or interacting on social media with our content does not establish a doctor-patient relationship.
Have access. But anywho, welcome back.
Good day, everyone. How are you doing today, Tiffany?
I'm here. I'm here. I can say that confidently that I am here.
Being here is half the battle.
It definitely is sometimes, for sure. How are you feeling knowing that today is big question day for you?
A little nervous. I have my coffee. I feel ready for um whatever is to come, but it's also something I'm really am excited to talk about today. Yeah, okay, so today, I know we kind of maybe mentioned this at the end of the last episode, but we're talking a little bit about the holidays and being in recovery from addiction or substance misuse. And so, um, one of the things that I just do want to offer, like a slight trigger warning, is we'll get a little more specific with like some of the triggers of the holidays and some of the common challenges for people in recovery. So if you're, maybe new to recovery or maybe just looking for I don't know, just a lighthearted podcast or something not like that, I would just maybe advise you to skip this one because we are really going to get um, a little more specific. If you want to be a part of that, like we would love to have you, but also we want to make sure you have that informed decision before we start kind of jumping into stuff. So, Tiffany, on that note, anything before we start diving in?
Um, no, I don't have anything other than I hope you brought your game face today.
I mean, my face is here.
Do you want me to start off, or do you want to start us off with some?
I think I probably have said this on this. I say this a lot, but I've said this in this forum. Like, just not pushing people if you know they're in recovery, and you don't know everyone's in recovery, but if you know that someone, sitting that 6 month mark, 1 year mark, or you've been a part of their story, it's just really not pushing it. That's just I wanted to start off with like if they say, hey, need to be home, need to do this, need to go, like it's just please respect that space. It's not sketchy. They may not want to tell you that they're going to one of those 24/7 meetings on Thanksgiving night because they've never done Thanksgiving sober. So just, really would just encourage you, like, respecting space, and also not pushing things. There's gosh, I need to update my stats, but it's like 1 in 8 people in the United States are in recovery, and that's something like about 30 to 40 million people somewhere in there are in recovery. So like if someone doesn't want to drink at the event, like we don't need to keep pushing. Like if people can see where the bar is, they see where the wine is. Like you don't need to keep following up. Like you're not going to know everyone's story and everyone's journey. And then some people just don't like to drink, and there's more ways to connect than not drinking around each other. So I just want to throw that out at the beginning, but I will ping it to you, Tiffany. You can start off with some questions.
Yeah, I think first off, I want to say, like, damn, I don't think I realized like the stats are that high, like 8 out of 10 people.
Hmm. Well,
That,
it's the stigma. Nobody talks. Not a lot of people talk. I shouldn't say no one, but a lot of people don't want to talk about this because when you hear, oh, I'm a person in recovery, that's why I use that term. I don't use people, former addicts or other. I don't really like that word. I actually would argue if you're not personally in recovery, you shouldn't be using that word at all because it carries the stigma of somebody with a brown paper bag, hiding behind, the building, or like, it carries this connotation so that's why we talk about people in recovery, people in long-term recovery, early recovery, because that's speaking like, hey, they're changing their life. They're doing treatment. They're reconnecting with their family. They have boundaries. And it's one of the hardest things I think anyone in their life can do is to find their recovery. And so I really hope we can talk about those people with respect and dignity and person-centered language. And I know as a counselor, Tiffany, know all the stats. Like when we can dehumanize someone, then they're not human. Then we can say a bunch of things we would never say about a fellow human. And so, yeah, I will use the term like people in addiction or people in recovery, but I will not use those words because they keep that stigma out there, which is why a lot of people will not talk about their recovery, because they're afraid of like those news stories that go viral of like, here's this mugshot of somebody after they overdosed, or hey, here's all these people hating in the comments. That doesn't happen as much. It's getting a little better, but it still happens. People are really judgmental and think jokes are funny about some of those things, and they're absolutely not. It's just like sexist jokes aren't funny. Jokes where somebody being in addiction is the punchline. There's nothing funny about that. So I'll throw it to you. I'm on my soapboxes
Yeah,
and
no, I
can go.
appreciate it. It makes me curious in terms of like I don't work in recovery, and I am curious now like what would be appropriate language to like start using, because I won't lie, I have found myself
Oh,
using that word of like that person's addicted, like in that, like hearing you say that I'm like, oh, I probably
um,
unintentionally triggered someone.
if you said like, oh, that person is suffering from the disease of addiction, or if you say, that's my cousin's a person in long-term recovery, or you say, hey, that person, it's the but like when people just use the word, I'm going to use the word. I don't like saying this. I really don't. Like it grinds my teeth. But the word that people throw out a lot is addicts, or that's an addict, or what it is such a dehumanizing, like it is just so devaluing that like that term makes like I've just worked with someone, it makes them feel like a plastic bag. It is just makes them feel horrible. And the thing I would say to anyone, when you try to talk to someone in recovery or in addiction and you think you need to be bad cop and tear them down, they're already doing 1,000 rounds a day with Mike Tyson in their head. They don't need anyone's help to feel bad about themselves, despite what you may see, or that god awful show Intervention. That guy, whoever created that, they should have to like account for that, because that shows what a lot of people think need to happen. And there's some tough conversations that are in people's journeys, but there's got to be trust. There's got to be a relationship there. You can't just come up to somebody and start talking to them sideways. I want to take that advice. Some random person comes up and starts judging me and my life and my decisions. If I don't care who that person is, I don't care what they're saying. So just people in long-term recovery, people suffering from the disease of addiction, people in early recovery, people suffering from alcohol abuse or misuse. Like just when we use the name or the people first language, that helps us challenge that stigma that exists. Still, even though we're working on it, it's still very much a present thing.
Yeah, yeah. I check myself now.
No, it's okay. I just I if I in my work, if a client wants to call themselves the word I'm talking about, like I will, that's a decision they get to make. If they understand the power of stigma and things, like I will educate them on that, but they not going to mansplain it. You get to pick it. Now, if I'm in a group, though, I will not allow my clients to call each other that, because I am not in that. That would be more old school AA. I appreciate AA. It has saved a lot of people. And I'm not trying to discredit that, because AA, if you go back in time, came when there was literally no help for alcohol abuse. Like there was next to none and no one. And they found that the value of community and people helping each other, and that people who have been through it understand it more than anyone else. that's still true in all the work we're doing today. The difference though is like we have a lot of other evidence-based interventions and there's a wide spectrum of treatment options and we need all those because a lot of people can't start with just teetotaling abstinence and refraining and stopping and doing the 12 steps. And a lot of people have some issues with religion or spirituality. So they actually do have 12 steps that are not religious or spiritual. But that's just not
You
enough for a lot of people.
Do
Yeah.
you mind sharing the names of those groups? Because I
Yeah.
know some individuals like who are like, oh, I would love to go to groups, but I don't want a spiritual context to like a group.
Yeah. Let me find. So like one is you could go to a meeting and not, but a lot of people just don't even want to go where it's like not. So I'm looking up, trying to find like the organization. Give me one moment.
Yeah.
I can't find like, let me look here. So like I like it and I maybe that's like encouraging or discouraging like how you search it. Like, can
Mhm.
bring things or not bring things. I would say like smart recovery is one that is similar spaced for some things. I'm looking up some of the alternatives right now just to see if I can find something. Smart recovery is the main one. There is a secular organization for sobriety. I'm not a sure, but smart recovery is the typical one that a lot of people go. There's not a spiritual foundation, it's more research based.
Okay.
But there is some communities, so some of my folks have liked that. Um, but I think I understand the hang up in this perception. So like it's a lot harder to explain, oh, it's not really about God, it's just about something that's not yourself. Like that takes a lot of time. And if you have hang ups and religious trauma, you're not going to go to that group. And most people don't with that.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Question number 1. How can individuals in recovery handle difficult family dynamics or traditions that feel unsafe?
Um, Honoring your inner voice for one, deciding what your limits are, not letting other people decide what those limits are. So some strategies can include like going to support, say, meeting with your counselor the day before you go or the day of you go, going to a meeting before you go, checking in with somebody, bringing someone with you. Make sure you can leave. So, for example, just driving yourself. Don't have someone else pick you up. You drive. Make sure you're not parked in, so that you can leave if you feel like you need to go. A lot of people will call someone on the way into an event like that and then call someone after and like have some check-ins. And so, if you have a sponsor, support people, if you don't get that call at a certain time like that, knowing they need to probably show up or whatever the plan kind of is. So, um, and it's also okay to literally know you shouldn't even try to go. Like it's okay to do that. It's not convenient making some of these changes, but like you have to trust your gut of like what is the space that you for sure cannot be in.
Hmm. Yeah. So it sounds like making sure you're appropriately setting a plan of action before engaging in some of these like family get-togethers or traditions.
Yeah, I would just also say like having a plan for how you're going to handle some of the stress and what you're going to do. Um, it's easy to just like justify things or be like, this is what I'm doing. But the other part of this is if you're having all this stress, it may not even just be the day of Thanksgiving. It may be like Saturday, stop Black Fridays, all that, like, but you've been with your family, you've been around your family, all stuff. Then that stress kicks in, and then you need to debrief. How do you handle that? So just having a plan for like, what are you going to do to manage it? And I would just encourage anyone not waiting till you need self-care. This time of year, we need to be doing those things proactively, not reactively. So really making sure you're a coffee person in the morning like myself, like get your coffee, take a second, take a breath. Don't wait till you're about to blow like a gasket to take care of yourself.
Yeah, that's a big one. Like, regardless of like if you're in recovery or not, like making sure you're taking care of yourself during the holidays is so important. What are your tips for avoiding alcohol or substances at holiday parties? When I was thinking about this, I guess the scenario that came to mind to me is not all of us, but some of us tend to have that really pushy, like,
Mm,
relative who's like, I made specialized drinks, or I made punch or sangria, or insert whatever
mm.
alcoholic drink. What are some tips to handle that if someone is being overly pushy without like starting a fight or
Um,
causing a scene or kind of like putting yourself in that weird hot spot situation?
yeah, good question. So just bringing your own beverage. So like, bringing your ginger beer, bringing your soda, like bringing something to the event you're going to that you know. It sounds pretty basic, but not taking any drinks from anyone else that you've not prepared yourself. Some people, this has happened. There's actually a really cool story. Tom Holland, I think, is intentionally choosing to be sober so he doesn't drink. And so he asked for like a non-alcoholic gin and tonic. And he tells the story he's at a restaurant and someone brought it. And he's like, wow, this is the best, alcohol-free gin and tonic I've ever had. He's like, what's the gin? And they're like, oh, it's regular gin. And he was really angry and upset because like for him, he's like, oh my God, like I've not drank. I think he was talking about like in a year or something, or maybe even longer. So just like not taking drinks that are prepared from someone else, bringing something. But also if you get to that, like just grab something and keep it in your hand. So keep the soda, keep the cup of iced tea, keep something in your hand, and don't put it down. Don't. But just tell people you're good. That should dissuade a lot of it. If you say no more than once to someone offering, like you at that point you have a few options. You can be very direct, like, I'm capable, I'll grab something if I need something. But if people are really gonna keep pushing, and some folks have had the experience of like, oh come on, you'll have fun, like, you may just need to leave if you literally can't be there without being harassed the whole time, then that's not a place to be. I would say most people do respect these boundaries, but not everyone does.
So something comes to mind for me, and like I am speaking from a hypothetical point of view because I'm not in recovery. But like I can imagine it would be extremely frustrating that like a something you have to do is like constantly hold a drink to sway people off.
No, it's not the most fun situation. I would agree to that. Uh, I would say it's a trade someone would rather make so that they can be in an event, because a lot of times the frustration is not being able to do things, and so it's like trying to go. Not everyone benefits from this, but some people like non-alcoholic drinks or beverages, so like mocktail or an alcohol-free beer, like those options. Other of my clients find that very triggering, and they won't ever mess with it. So it's a little different, but it is frustrating. But I really will say, I would say like 90% of people respect boundaries and aren't pushing. So like they're not going to say, "Oh, are you sure?" I think we have a lot more understanding. But there are some that still push, maybe from ignorance or just lack of respect for the boundaries. And so like just you may not need to be around those people at any point, because it's just not helpful. But yeah, it is, I think, a stress, and it's not a some people it's not a forever thing, but I guess the other thing of just, if that's the way you can be with places you want to be and in the situations when you be, like, it's some trades, but recovery is not just something that's only stressful on the holidays. It's stressful 365 days a year and something you have to manage all the time. So in a way, they've become accustomed to managing it and figuring it out, and so that's just another moment of having to manage it.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, just I don't know, from an outside person hearing that this is something they just have to do, it sounds extremely frustrating.
No, it is. I think there are some people who are also struggling with the disease of addiction and may not want to admit that or acknowledge that. And so then when someone else makes a change, this could get into like family trauma, generational trauma, you know, and they have big reactions to it. And it's just like that first time with, I'm sure some of the people listening, like you go back to a family event, but you're not doing what used to happen. And it's a big problem that you're not doing it the way it used to be done. You're not allowing it to go that way. Like, you know, you're not allowing your kids to be parented by everybody. You're not insert thing. It can become that kind of situation, but usually those unhealthy people are being unhealthy, and it's just they're finding something for that to show up in. Maybe not intentional, but it's pretty easy. Um, you know, I've had clients say this, and it's very zoomed out, but they're like, oh, you know, like, yeah, you know, I stopped drinking. I was drinking like 4 beers a day. I mean, I had a problem. And then someone will say, well, I drink 6 beers a day. Like, I don't have a problem. And it gets very uncomfortable in those kind of moments. So that's where it's like some people want to be around, some don't. But um, it's you got to have a really good plan, and you have to have really good awareness, and you got to be able to exit. If you're not going to leave, if you go and something's there, then you probably shouldn't go to those events because it's just a very stressful situation.
Fair, fair. Um, which kind of leads me into kind of my next topic point of like, how do you cope with grief or loneliness while everyone around you seems to be cheerful and engaging in these things, and you feel isolated because you're in recovery or you're recovering?
Um, Well, I think every great recovery is built off community and connection, whether that's 12 step or not 12 step. Like, we're not meant to do life alone. So, having that community of people who are healthy supports and do understand and maybe even have lived experience are super necessary. Um, but, like, I mean, there can be some sadness. Like, I've had clients who miss the ability to drink, or I've had clients who miss the ability to go to a bar or do certain things. I will say most people don't miss it more than what the recovery is because there's this term in substance use counseling called like the pink glasses or the pink cloud, where you look back at stuff and you really are like, oh, recovery is amazing. Or you look back and you're like, oh, like the rose tinted glasses is like, oh, like I was handling it so well. And you know, like I could handle a few beers, or oh, like the bar would actually help me network and move up in my career. Or, oh, you know, I want to be with my kids' friends. And we start downplaying like the withdrawals, the loss of job, the you know, the missed pickup. Like, you know, it's just a human thing. We're very faulty with our brain and so selectively remembering. But if someone's grounded and looking at it all objectively, playing it all the way through, playing the tape, typically that is helpful because, yeah, it can be a bummer, but you're trading those few drinks for not knowing where you are, not being back on probation, not getting a DUI, not hurting someone. You know, like so it's like it has to be framed that way because if it's only framed like, well, this sucks, like it does suck in some ways, but there's more than just that going on.
So making sure we have like an adequate support system.
Yeah, yeah. It's a slight hot take. I think everyone's journey is different and unique, and I love that for them. I get frustrated when someone comes on a podcast like this or goes on like the talk circuit or makes a post and says, I'm a really strong person and I quit cold turkey and I never picked up the next day. I stopped smoking cigarettes after 40 years of smoking every day, or I stopped doing meth after 10 years, or that is great that that person's had that experience. That is not everyone's experience. And in fact, statistically, is so rare that it's like chasing a lotto ticket. And so I think sometimes I love that people want to share their journey. That's their right to share their story. But if you're sharing that story to like shame people and try to say that people lack willpower, addiction is a disease. It impacts your biological systems. It impacts your brain. It impacts your thinking. Uh, and we need to not be trying to spread this. So sometimes you'll find people within the recovery community like judging people's recovery, or you did it this way, not that way. Um, This may sound silly, but the best comparison I have is kind of like parents judge each other. Oh, you let your kid watch Bluey. Oh, you do this or that, or oh, you do like it kind of turns into that where like people in recovery can sometimes be like, oh, you don't do NA or oh, you do MAT. And it's like it's just we're on the same team, and I think sometimes we don't need to like be focused on what's dividing us. But it's super easy and super common. And so, again, I don't want to discredit those people, but there's a reason everybody tells those stories about the person I know that quit cold turkey. But if you focus on that and then you can't quit cold turkey, you may have this idea of like, there's something wrong with me because I can't do that. When it's like most people can't cold turkey quit many things. And if we're talking about alcohol and benzos, you shouldn't. You could die if you just quit cold turkey if you're at a certain level.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I don't even thinking outside of like the recovery realm, like the idea of quitting something cold turkey sounds so hard.
I mean, there's habits, there's routines, but there's dependence, there's tolerance, and there's just I don't know. So it's not like everyone. I just think it's very easy to judge. We just went through an election season, and it's like, politics can be a big divide for so many people, and there's a lot of things meaningful. I think, sometimes I'm like, hey, like if you're in a recovery group and you're all trying to manage the recovery, that's hard enough. Like, why are we looking for this stuff that brings us apart? Like when we know that, hey, there's not as many people that can understand. So it doesn't say that politics don't matter. It just is more of like, hey, uh, we're not usually getting too much support when we're in recovery trying to work through things. We're going to need that on an ongoing basis. Um, but it's difficult. It is difficult, and I think I don't know. I try to normalize some of it because when COVID quarantining was happening, alcohol sales were up 40%, which means everyone was not everyone, a lot of people were drinking too much. And so I'm like, it's just one of those things that I think alcohol is so tricky because it's literally everywhere. I mean, crap, I probably can drive to the gas station by my house and I'm almost 100% confident there's alcohol in there. I can drive down the road and see multiple bars or multiple restaurants. I mean, there's very few places that don't have alcohol. I mean, shoot, one of the ones some of my clients talk about is Cracker Barrel has mimosas and alcohol, and they're like, that used to be the one we could go to. Or, a lot of places now you can drink. You can go to the Cincinnati Zoo. They've got alcohol throughout. You can get a drink. You can get a drink at the Cincinnati Museum Center. You can get drinks and so it's not just bars. And so that's some of the things where people are like, oh, well, just don't go to bars. It's like, well, it's at most holiday events, most places, like a lot. There's alcohol is one of those things, and we even joke about. I mean, if you've seen the decor, that is all about drinking to excess. I don't even want to plug some of them, but like, there's so many jokes about like wine and like all like the different levels of intoxicate. I mean, it's almost like a permitted thing and joke that you could make. So it can be really pervasive to like not engage with that drinking culture or like memes about that or oh it's Friday, get to the end of the week or it's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah. It almost sounds like it's gotten to like a comparison level of like like fast food and like sugar and sweets and like junk food. Like I feel like it wouldn't strike someone as abnormal if Doritos and alcohol was next to each other.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, there's just a lot. I mean, it's just there's a lot there. There's scenes. I mean, if you think about this is a little bit of a different substance, but just Netflix got so much crap a year. I think this was been 2 years ago because like every movie and show they had, people were smoking to high. Like I mean, just smoking cigarettes like the entire time. Like where they, I think someone documented like the amount of minutes of Netflix original content that showed cigarette smoking, and so then they like you kind of probably could see it more in Stranger Things. Like they've been trying to make it less because they're like people are it's like, oh yeah, smoking's cool. Da, 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 da. So it's like I mean, and so if we just even think about all of the media where drinking shown, like that's okay. A tricky one that I guess this will be one of the last new things I bring up in this is that like people with gambling disorders struggling with gambling. It's been a brutal season. Ohio a couple years ago legalized sports betting, and that has just opened up the floodgates in Ohio. So there's been just, I mean, like a skyrocketing amount of calls for people struggling. It's really difficult. You can have it right on your phone, and with the internet, you could be gambling all day, every day. So even that, like, I'm thinking through some of my clients I have right now. We got to talk through, hey, like, do you skip watching the football Thanksgiving game because you literally can't turn on a single football game and not see a splattering of ads about betting, sports bet, cash back, safe bet. Uh, my God, just all of it. I mean, you also probably can't watch a football game and not see alcohol, but people talk, but it's always a little bit of something we can. And so I'm not trying to shame people who can drink and not aren't struggling with addiction or can bet a little bit and not, but it's just this like dichotomy where people are judging really harshly and it's like, well, how could that happen? It's like, well, like it's genetic sometimes. There's a predispositioning, there's environmental factors, there's all of these other things going on. So it's a very complicated thing. So I do want to like help people if you're listening, like how do you handle some of these situations? But again, we've talked about this on so many episodes. You can't give blanketed advice to people. If the therapist is doing that, every single client gets the exact same thing. That's terrible therapy. Like Tiffany and I talk about this off mic and on this, that we got to be customizing it to the person. Not everybody needs the same things. So it should be getting personalized to you and the fit and what you need, not everyone does this or that. So I don't mean to go on too many directions, Tiffany. But I was like, there's so much to try to
Yeah,
give
but
context to.
yeah, I do want to point out that like yes, therapy should be tailored to you, but also being careful not to, I don't want to shade any therapist, but like not falling into a therapist who says they do everything. Like my primary focus is compassion, focused therapy, holistic. I do a lot of CBT, trauma informed care. I don't use ACT somatic approaches. So if someone's coming and that's what they want, I'm going to be like, hey, like I can't tailor my style to that because like I'm just not trained in it. So if you're finding someone who's like, oh, I do all the approaches, be a little cautious.
There are some trained with more than others, but correct. If someone is like, I do everything, I can work with everything. Um, or, well, that'll sound like too much shade. But, if someone's always open all the time, and they haven't started their practice like last week, maybe just take some of that into consideration. But yeah, it's a different journey for everyone, and so I think we think of the holidays as a stressor, but again, our friends and family in recovery need support all year round, not just from Halloween to New Year's. And so just support could just be like, it may sound strange, but just literally meeting up with them, but offering to like meet up at a restaurant that doesn't have alcohol, or hey, let's go do something and not making it based around something. And just, you know, this may sound strange, but like just even offering up, like, hey, at Thanksgiving, there'll be wine. My mom's bringing wine. So, like, just want you to be aware of that so that people can know. It just that, not making them have to ask some of those questions that they probably need that info to know. And you may honoring what they say of like, hey, if you could do this, that's helpful, or this or that. Like just really like letting them feel supported and like what they're needing and feel seen. Like those are all very, 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 very helpful things.
Last kind of question, yeah, it's a question that I have for you is what are accessible resources for people that don't have those immediate support systems?
Oh, there's like the Meanings Guide app, so you could put that on your phone and try to find something. Uh, Put yourself out there. I know it's like, but like really, just if you go to, and it's not about a religious push. It doesn't, there's a 12 step for everything. Like there's an anonymous group for everything. There's from heroin anonymous to cocaine anonymous, sex anonymous, gambling anonymous. Like there's so many, like they just know what you're going through, like genuinely. And like if especially during the hot, like if you go on like a Thanksgiving night or Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, and you're like people are know that people are struggling and they're going to help support. And I know that you can be an introvert or not want to do that, but like we've got to put ourselves out there in a safe way to get some of that support. And like there's sober events, like some people do like sober giving, where you get to go and have some of the fun, but it's sober friendly events. So, but all of this involves putting yourself like out there. And so we have to find the safe ways to do that. So if you don't have any going into the holidays, no judgment. But it's something that we need to do. It may not be something we want to do. Kind of like I need to take my vitamin. I need to get some movement. I may not always want to do that, but I know I'll feel better if I do some of those things. So with yeah, and it's not to shame people, not like, hey, you got to go to a meeting every day or you got to be with people every day, but we just as humans, we're not meant to be doing anything alone. We're just not, and that doesn't mean you have to have a romantic partner, but we all need people. We all need community. Uh, yeah. So I won't get all up in my soapboxes, but like that's that. I think all of us need that community.
Yeah. Everyone needs people need people. Um, yeah. So yeah, it sounds like if we need support this holiday season to check out the Meetings app, AA, Al-Anon, and other resources of that nature for that extra support.
Yeah, I mean, and if you want to try it from a mental health thing, Angle NAMI has some wonderful resources and groups and supports if it's more grief. But just taking some risk, but like we have to put some things out there, plant some seeds. It's very rare you're just gonna readily show up and it's like, oh hey, here's a complete replacement for the community you've been looking for. Like that just I don't think that happens for people. So we have to kind of pursue some of this very intentionally.
Hmm. Well, that kind of wraps up my questions. Is there any last tidbits you want to leave us with?
Um, Last thing I'll say is probably more if there's people in recovery listening. Recovery is not the only thing that defines you. And the other piece that I will just add, relapse is a part of recovery. And so if you do happen to take a sip of something and you're like, oh crap, or oh no, or oh, that wasn't a good idea. It's never too late to stop in that process. Sometimes what can happen is that thinking error of like, well, I've already relapsed, and then you can justify things. So just withdrawal, like just remembering, like, nope, never too late just to pause in that process, never too late to reach out to your supports and stop that train. And so again, not everybody's in recovery is hanging by a thread, but just whatever that's worth to people, because this is a difficult time of year. It's always difficult, but this is, I think, one of the harder moments of the year.
Yeah, and just prioritizing yourself. Like, it's okay to say no, it's okay to set boundaries, protect your peace. Like, you gotta take care of you first and foremost before you can even offer any of yourself to other people. Yeah. With that being said, we want to thank you guys for joining us today. Feel free to reach out to us. We have an Instagram, we have a Facebook page, we have a Patreon page. We now have a YouTube channel. So there's multiple avenues for you guys to reach out to us.
What a time.
Yeah. Man.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Deciphering Growth. We hope you found our conversation helpful and insightful. Subscribe to our podcast for more episodes and check out our Patreon for more content. Don't hesitate to contact us on social media if you have any questions or comments. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep growing.